Hello everyone, my name is Matt O'Brien, current player at Newport RFC, or as BJ used to rightly call it, the greatest rugby club in the world. The following video was made for our 150th anniversary, and it's an interview with BJ that was displayed on our anniversary dinner night. But this is the extended version that, and those of you who know BJ, it will be quite extended, but there's some great stories in there, and I think you get to see just what Newport rugby meant to him and what rugby in general meant to him really, and the club and BJ's family. I thought it was a great chance to show the world really, or show anybody who wanted to watch it what a man he was, and give everybody the chance to see it out of a mark of sort of respect for him really, and have it as a great memory that people can look back on. So just he was somebody who meant so much to everyone involved with the club really, and I saw him as a great friend, somebody who I got to know over the last sort of 10 years, and he leaves such a big hole in the club that it's going to be so hard to fill, and I'm going to miss him dearly really, and I know everybody else is too. So hopefully you enjoy it, and it brings you some laughs and brings you some tears, but everybody thought that it was a great idea to put it out there for everybody to see. So we're lucky to have known him. I'm lucky to have known him, and Newport Rugby, we're lucky to have him, and he's going to be missed so much by everybody. So rest in peace, BJ.
We'll probably begin with one obvious question. Do you remember yourself, like in the childhood, the way you started playing rugby? How was it?
Incredible. Very difficult to get modern day players to understand what it was back in the 1950s, Newport and Cardiff matches, when you were attracting crowds of 25, 30,000. I mean, there was the one crowd in 1951 season of 48,500 people watching two club sides play. They can't sell tickets now to watch Wales play.
I think you kind of started your rugby path. You played alongside Herrera, wasn't it? He was one of your teammates.
He was in the side when I made my debut. I came down here to Rodney Parade from Cumcan United, where I was playing as a schoolboy.
Do you remember your debut?
Yes, I remember my debut extremely well, and the rest of Wales will remember my debut, because that was the last time that Wales beat New Zealand. I made my debut here on Rodney Parade for Newport against the Harlequins. Two other debutants were John Herrera, as you quite rightly mentioned, who joined from Crosskeys, and the other one was the mercurial Onthlywin Brace, who came here, and before he went to Oxford University, and struck up with Roy Burnett, the first genius superstar at Rodney Parade. And they had a half-back combination that in the modern day game, money couldn't buy it. There wouldn't be enough money to buy them. They were incredible.
Do you remember yourself, like if this were a period of time, and what were you told about Newport before you actually joined the team? Do you remember what was Newport back there in the days?
Playing in junior rugby, and throughout the rugby world, Newport were considered themselves as the greatest rugby club. 12 miles down the road, the blue and black gentlemen, they considered them as the greatest rugby club. I think it was a possibility that it was a joint, that they were the two greatest rugby clubs in the world, and had achieved those positions right from the very start of Welsh Rugby Union.
You were involved in 3 actually huge victories. One against Australia, I believe, 3-0 was it? New Zealand, obviously, 1963. We'll talk about it. And South Africa. Remembering the game over here against New Zealand, like, what was the preparation coming into this rugby?
Well, there again, I was in the fortunate position that 6 games after making my debut in 1953, I was playing as an 18-year-old schoolboy against the All Blacks. And that was an incredible experience itself. And fortunately, I kicked a goal, a penalty goal, so my name is in the record books forever. But it was a magnificent achievement. The one thing that I refer to now, after a lifetime at Rodney Parade, is to the modern day people, and I have over the past years. It is the only time that rugby, true rugby sides, came onto the stand from the bottom, from the entrance at the middle of the stand. We came down from the dressing room. We walked all the usual walk down here. We went across. We went into Rodney Road, and down underneath, walked underneath the stand, both sides, talking to one another actually, and ran onto the field from underneath the middle of the stand. And Ken Jones was our captain, another superstar player in his own right. And when we got onto the field, we lined up the anthems, and then the All Blacks did their haka, and we were, I can see us now, we were stood at this end of the ground across the halfway line, and Ken told the whole Newport team that we had to go down and cookie down, as they'd call it. We went down on our haunches so that the crowd at this end of the field could see the haka. That we'll always remember.
If you had to compare, I think you watched the All Blacks play in the Cardiff Arms Park back in the days. And after that, you played against them.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
Incredible. And the 63 game, well, it's immortal, and quite rightly so. It was a magnificent performance by the Newport 15 on that day. Every player playing his part. It had been meticulously planned by Bryn Meredith, Bryn Williams, and Ian McJennett, the 3 coaches. And it had been absolutely, every tackle, every kick, everything had been meticulously organized. And my never-ending memory of that game was at the final whistle was it, we were defending the clubhouse end of the ground here, and we were just in front of our goalpost because Don Clark had come into the line to try and win the game, and he'd been bundled into touch right in the corner here, and the referee, Gwyn Walters, blew his whistle, and John Uzzell, who dropped the goal to win the game for us, but it was my fellow centre, jumped on my back and he said, "You've done it, you old bugger, you've done it." And that I became only the 2nd Welshman in history, and that still stands today, to have beaten the 3, South Africa, New Zealand and Australia, in Wales. Other players have done it. Gareth has done it, and Phil and people like that, they've done it. The real superstars of the game. But it had only been done once before, and that was back in 1905, a little before my time, by Percy Bush at Cardiff.
Actually, if we saw the comments after the game, many even New Zealand journalists said that the better team won, no excuses. And if you watch this very game back, you can clearly see that All Blacks sometimes were not even allowed to just get out of their own half.
Yeah.
How did you even achieve that?
And this, as I say, it was meticulously planned, and everybody had their job, and as it happened on the day, everybody did their job, and it worked to perfection. One of the big things, and I became friends with him at that game, was the great Don Clark. His brother Ian was also in the team. His brother Ian had played in the 53 game, and we were the only two from that game to play in 63. And Ian went on to become president of the New Zealand Rugby Union later. But Don emigrated from New Zealand to South Africa. And on all of my visits to South Africa, I would have lunch or dinner with Don Clark, and he would remember the game vividly, because it's the only game of rugby football that he played, even as a schoolboy, that he never had a kick at goal. He never had a kick at goal here at Rodney Parade.
They usually say that All Blacks have their own magic. So if you were to describe and compare, what would you say and how would you describe black and amber magic at this very point and later on?
Again, it's very difficult to see. If we look back, or if I look back now at that time, particularly in the 50s and 60s, my playing era here at Rodney Parade, we probably had two of the finest outside halves to play the game. One was Roy Burnett, who was an absolute magician on the field. Unfortunately for him, in relation to international honours, he clashed with Cliff Morgan, and Cliff Morgan got the votes, and Roy only played once for Wales, which was an absolute travesty. If you look at the situation now of the depth of despair for a number 10 to play for Wales, Roy Burnett would have been churning the caps out by the dozen. And the other one was obviously David Watkins, who was an absolute legend.
Talking about David and Brian Price at this very time, the captain himself, right? Green also. How would you even describe them as legends of Newport, as your teammates? Great teammates, great friends. I think that was the other factor of the side during the 50s and the 60s, and the 60s and the 70s. There was the great Newport team spirit, that you were in a team, and if you were in the team, you were in the team for life, because you were that good a player. And they were both great players, superstars in their own right. They were also great captains. Obviously, if I'm looking for a captain and say, you don't captain sides to beat the All Blacks very often. So I would put the factor of Ben being a captain just ahead of David, although David had all the experience here at Newport with Wales, with the British Lions, and then up at Rugby League as well. I also think that you were coaching Newport when they played against South Africa in 1969, wasn't it the case?
That's right, yes.
How did you feel being on the sidelines? What did change for you? What was the atmosphere?
I think you were more nervous on the touchline, because when you were on the field playing, you've got everything about the game to concentrate on and focus on. Whereas on the touchline, you were at the hands and feet of 15 players on the field, that you may have laid it all down on paper, you may have gone through it training session after session, but you can't guarantee that it's going to work. And I think that was true in the 69 game against John Anthony was captain of Newport. We scored 2 tries in that they were meticulous, but they had been planned on the training field, and they couldn't have worked better.
You know, just remembering the footage from these very games, you know, and like being on this touchline. After New Zealand game, we can clearly see on like the recording of the live stream that people, the fans, they were that close to basically the pitch. You can feel the fans, right?
Yeah.
And everyone starts hugging each other. Everyone is celebrating. Like you mentioned kind of a couple of words about what was happening, but how did you feel? Like, did you immediately rush to somebody? How did you feel like having fans that close to you?
Well, I think that people who know Rodney Parade and know the distance from, as it was then, from the dressing rooms to the ground, which left something like about 180, 200 yards that you had to mingle. And imagine now you've got 30,000 people, and you are having to make your way off the field back to the dressing room. And then I would have thought that it must have taken at least 20 minutes for the whole team to get back in the dressing room. And there the champagne was flowing. Fred Cox, who was the groundsman here, he opened the windows in the dressing room, in the home dressing room, and told Brian Price to lead the boys, the team, out onto the roof of the shelter. Now the shelter is the building just in front of the clubhouse. And we all stood on top of the shelter, and there must have been, impossible to say, because the whole of the area in front, which was the tennis courts area, was people singing and chanting and what have you. And we must have been stood out there for at least 3/4 of an hour, where they just wouldn't let us go back into when we went to get back in, they wouldn't let us. They would sing more, and it was a fantastic occasion.
And sorry, we'll probably jump back to the very beginning. Like when we see haka, them doing haka actually,
Yeah.
we see the crowd actually roaring after that. How did you feel? Did you feel like, oh, that's the moment to prove ourselves, to show ourselves to the world? Like, what was going on inside?
I think that as far as myself was concerned, as I say, having faced it at 18 and then again at 28, there were different experiences. But I think as far as the haka is in relation to myself as a player, was that was their indication of how strong they were going to be. I think that the depth of they would do anything for their country. The silver fern meant everything to them. And talking years afterwards, because again I was fortunate because of my South African link to have a very good relationship with Colin Meads. And number of occasions in South Africa, Colin Meads and Don Clark and I and a couple of the South African boys, we would have dinner together and we would reminisce about the games, etc. And it was the passion that came out from them as players during the haka was understandable as to, and the haka to them in those days, and I can't say for today, but I should imagine it's exactly the same, is that they are representing all those players who have worn the black and jersey and the silver fern in the past. And as well as themselves now, it's the past, the heritage, the great heritage of New Zealand rugby.
Also, maybe coming to, once again, the comparison of current era and what you've played, what you've experienced. How much do you think rugby changed?
Oh,
what's the difference?
incredible, incredible, incredible. And I think that I think that the modern media on occasions fail to, and they know the reason, but they are afraid to tell, like here in Wales, right? Regionalisation, the clubs told the Welsh Rugby Union that it wouldn't succeed right at the very beginning. And that is the case, and we've seen it. I mean, we're in a situation now. One example that I use, and I talk about outside halves a bit, is that if you go back to the 1960s, late 50s, early 60s, here in Monmouthshire, which by the way is the biggest area that Danny Craven referred to as being the greatest and the toughest and the hardest area in world rugby, Monmouthshire. But if you looked in that back in those days, you had David Watkins, outside half for Newport. You had Benny Jones, outside half for Pontypool. You had Ian James, outside half for Abertillery. You had Wilf Hunt, outside half for Ebbw Vale. You had Graham Wilton, outside half for Newbridge. And you had Gary Musto, outside half for Crosskeys. Any one of those players would have been gaining 15, 20, 25 caps in the number 10 jersey for Wales. And where are we? We're struggling. You know, we're right up to date now in Australia. What do? We take a centre. We take a centre and play him at outside half to try and solve the problem. And he doesn't solve the problem.
Maybe as for Newport and witnessing the success we've seen, we basically won the cup, I believe, in 2001, and well, once again a Principality recent victory after the COVID. I think it was 2021 probably we won. You witnessed all of it. Like, what did you feel? Already being a president, but still seeing this very success that continues and goes on.
I think that one of the great things that I will always remember during my presidency is the factor that winning the cup in 22, I think, beating Aberystwyth in the final, but I think that the biggest factor in that cup winning run was beating Cardiff in the semi-final at Sardis Road in Pontypridd. Matt O'Brien, OB, was captain, and we beat Cardiff there to get our place in the final. But to me, and to most every other black and amber supporter, was the achievement that we beat Cardiff 4 times in the season. That to me, as a Newport man, is on the same scale as beating the All Blacks, beating South Africa, beating Australia. That's the level that I considered that achievement, beating them 4 times.
That's what we call rivalry.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen you talking with OB a lot. I assume he's your favorite player, but what is the advice you usually pass on to him? What do you usually discuss to you? What is it that he shares with you and you try to tell him?
I wouldn't say Obi's my favorite player, because I like to think that I treat them all the same. I appreciate talking to OB when he will come and he'll ask advice, and he'll talk, and he himself wants to do that. He's a player. I'm talking about the lack of outside halves in Wales, right? If OB had been playing for the Dragons in the last 2 seasons, at the level that he's playing and has played for Newport, he would be in the Welsh squad. That's how good he was. If you ask any of the other clubs in the Premiership, the first person they would say when they talk about Newport or talk about outside halves is OB, and that's he's very, very conscious of his own Newport heritage, and he will do anything for Newport.
And as for preserving this very heritage, I think, how important it is for you to still be out there, to still support guys, and to still kind of remind them of how huge the past is they are trying to extend into the future?
I think that the last few years we've been very lucky here at Newport with the management, with the board of directors. I think the board of directors have done a magnificent job of maintaining Newport where they deserve to be, and that is at the forefront of Welsh rugby. And that is in a great deal of credit of that goes to the board of directors. I think that on the coaching side, Ty is very Newport orientated, and he has got the rest of his coaching staff and the playing staff in that way. There's a Newport way, and we'll do it because the Newport way has been proven over 150 years to be a successful way.
If you once again look at your career and all the time spent with Newport, is there a moment that is usually going maybe under the radar, a bit underrated, but which you are really proud about and which you usually wanna share with people, which people don't usually remember of?
I think that if I look at my career at Newport, and I start off as a player, then I captained the side, then I coached the side, then I went into administration, I then became chairman, and now for the last, and then, 5 years I became ambassador for the club, and the last few years is president, which I'm really, really proud to be president. I think of all the great players, administrators that have been connected with Newport Rugby Football Club, is to be president of that club. Newport has made an enormous contribution, not only players, I've been talking mainly players and matches, but the administrators here at Rodney Parade have been outstanding. World administrators, world level administrators. You go back, I often again refer to the fact that when I came here as an 18-year-old schoolboy, there used to be 20 plus committee men. Now you've got a board of directors of 6. But on that board, on that board of 20, or a committee of 20, I worked it out, I worked it out on one occasion that there were 14 of them had played for Newport first team. 10 of them had captained Newport. There were 8 Welsh internationals and there were 6 British Lions, all on the committee of Newport Rugby Football Club. That shows you the strength and the calibre of Newport Rugby Football Club.
Whenever you are being called Mr. Newport, what do you feel?
I laugh, right? I laugh when I'm called Mr. Newport. And my good friend Benny is the main man who calls me Newport, Mr. Newport. Because going back, and I just talked about administrators, going back to my playing career, particularly in my early playing career during the 50s, there was a gentleman called Bill Everson, who was secretary of this great club. He had captained the club, he had played for Wales, and then he became secretary. And he was referred to by the rest of Wales as Mr. Newport. And one little story about Bill was I'd been playing 4 years and I was doing national service. It was in 1957. I was doing national service at Newport Services in Plymouth. And the secretary of the Newport Services Club was John, cut that bit. What's his name? Oh, no, the broadcaster.
Oh, John Inverdale.
That's right. I think I'm back on. The secretary of Newport Services at that time was Surgeon Commander John Inverdale. Obviously, the father of the current BBC correspondent. You ask it, John Inverdale is there, but also John Inverdale, current John Inverdale, is president of Esher Rugby Club, and they had their centenary season last season, and invited us, and we went up to play. But the story about him, about his dad, was that Newport had had a rocky start to the 1957-58 season, and they were due to play the Wallabies, Australia, in the November. I was having a particularly good time in 57-58 in the services. In actual fact, 58 was a very good time as a player personally. Mr. Everson and Vernon Parfitt came down to Plymouth to ask me if I would come home and play in a few games prior to the Australian game. They wanted me to play against Australia for Newport. So I said, well, I obviously, you would mean coming home. So I said, yes, I'll obviously come home. But I said, I can't do anything about it. I said, the Navy, the combined services, you'll have to sort that out. So they came down. Bill Everson came down with Vernon, and they sorted matters out. And they said I could come home and play on a Saturday, as long as I played for Newport Services, etc., on the Wednesday. So it all went nicely for 1 or 2 games. And then all of a sudden I got selected to play for the combined services, right, which was the ultimate as far as the services was concerned. And national service-wise then, rugby league players could play alongside rugby union in the same team and played rugby union. And in the combined services was one of the great wings of rugby league, Mike Sullivan, and Jim Challoner, Great Britain Rugby League centre, also played in. I was selected to play for the combined services against Cardiff, and I thought it was very nice. Right, looking forward to it now. All of a sudden, I have a telephone call in the barracks in Plymouth. Mr. Everson on the phone. We don't want you to play on Wednesday because we were playing, I think it was Harlequins the following Saturday, which was the last game before the Wallaby game. So I said, oh, I don't know. I said, I'm not going to ring up and say, or I'm not going to go to the office and to say that I'm not fit or can't play, etc., etc. I said, if you sort it out, that's fine, which he duly did. So I came home on the weekend now, and I was going to stay home for the Wallaby game on the Wednesday. So I came here training on the Monday night, and there was discussion with the players. Leighton Jenkins was captain, and we were chatting away, Bryn Meredith and all. And all of a sudden, Bill Everson appeared, which was very unusual. Stood, then all of a sudden he said something. He said, you know that you have to be here at a specific time on Wednesday before. Yeah. And he said, looked across at me, he said, BJ, you remember, don't you? And I said, yes, Bill. And he said, pardon? And then I had realized that was the very first time that I had called him Bill other than Mr. Everson. And that was the kind of upbringing that you had here. There was the Newport way, and it was the only way when you were in the black and amber jersey.
What does this club mean to you? I mean, if you were to start a sentence and say, Newport is for me, you know.
Oh, this is the greatest club in the world. And no argument about it. No argument about it. They're, and as I say, they've been very fortunate during the latter part of the professional era, because there was a lot of money being bandied about, which didn't achieve anything. It didn't enhance Newport at all. Newport have advanced themselves greatly under the current board of directors than they did in the pre-money days, because people looked upon it. Now people look upon Newport and they see, we mentioned OB, but there's lots of people. There's Ben Roach now, the current captain, an excellent captain, an excellent player. Rhys Jenkins, Kyle, Elliot Fruin, you just name them off. They're all what I refer to as true Newport players. They play for Newport. And a lot of that, as I say, comes down to the fact that when they come into the club, and they've got people like Mark Woodman, who's now the new chairman in this 150th season, and I wish would Worky all the best. He's a true black and amber.
What do you think the future holds for
I think that a bigger question than that is, what does the future hold for rugby football?
That's right.
If you look at it, and obviously rugby football is administered and run by the Welsh Rugby Union. But there's a lot of difference in running a multi-million pound organisation to what it was back in 1905, when it was the game. It was the leisure activity. Now, rugby football is a full-time occupation, a full-time job, and it is, looking at it and watching it on television is something that I wouldn't want to be playing myself. And then there again, the drop goal. Dennis Perrott, who was the left wing outside me, turned around and said, when he dropped the goal, he said, "Why the fucking hell didn't he pass it?" He said, "We were both of us were clear." He said, he said, "Either you or I," he said, "would had a clear run into the try line." He said, "It's a fucking good job it went over." And Dennis was the most docile of guys, but Dennis was furious at that actual time. And then, I mean, we've laughed about it many times since.
Still furious about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Why? Oh why?
I don't know. I think we'll even go on.
Because he said about that, Ben. He said, both of us is clear. I said, "You don't think I'd have fucking passed to you, do you?"
Not a chance.
that haka there, seeing that haka there, and seeing the people. Sir Wilson Winnery reckons that is the finest All Black side. Because he said, and when you look back on it now, you've got to look at Sir Colin Meads, Sir Brian Lahore, Sir Wilson Winnery. They all became knights, right? And they were the back row: Kel Tremaine, Wacker Nathan, and Brian Lahore. Another little interesting, which may be of interest, is 1995 Rugby World Cup, South Africa. Jacqueline and I are out there for the whole of the World Cup, supporting Wales, obviously. On one occasion, we end up in the grandstand at Ellis Park, and there's Dr. Jackie Kyle, there's Noel Henderson, there's Dr. Jack Matthews, Blethyn Williams, and B.J. Jones, all in the stand together. But as we know, Wales got knocked out. So the final, the All Blacks versus the Springboks. Jacqueline and I are staying with Hans Strowley, a member of the Blue Bulls, or Northern Transvaal as they were then, committee. But it was his son was Rudolph Strowley, who had been over here and had played for Penarth before going back to South Africa, getting in the Springbok side and being part of that World Cup team. But as I said earlier, I used to have these meetups with Don Clark in particular. Don Clark took me and Hans for breakfast to the All Blacks Hotel on the Friday morning. took it in, Brian Lahore was manager, wasn't he? So Brian, as soon as he saw me, he was very, very welcoming, and etc. He said, "Come with me." So we went into the players' dining room. And I thought, what's he up to here now? And now all of a sudden, we got to the back, and who should be sat there with the team, because he was one of the coaches, was Earl Curtin. Coach Earl Curtin had played in the '63 game here, right? And he only played 2 games on the tour. He didn't play again after they lost here. He went up to Earl Curtin, tapped him on the shoulder, and he said, "I got someone here who would like to be remembered to you." And Earl Curtin turned around and he said, "Where do you get him from?" And he said, "You remember him?" He said, "Remember him? Of course I bloody remember him." He said, "I bloody put up with him." He said, "I put up with being called him after the bloody game at Rodney Parade." And he said, "I didn't play again for the All Blacks until the following year." And it was that kind of thing. And another one in relation, all related to that '63 game, was that I was out there in South Africa again for Dr. Danny Craven's 80th birthday. And there'd been people invited from, I'd been invited. So I was walking in now into the reception. Behind, who should be in front of me, was Sir Colin Meads and Sir Gareth Edwards. So he was walking in, he turned around, and I was walking in actual fact, with Christian Barnard, the heart surgeon. I was walking with him and Hans, and he turned, and Meads, he turned around and he said, "How did you get invited here?" And I said, "Well, we have name in some places, mate." And he said to Gareth, he said, "If it hadn't been for those 15 bastards," he said, at Rodney Parade, he said, "we would have been immortal." He said, "We would have been immortal in New Zealand." He said, "That bloody defeat cost us." And I said, "Get out." And he said, "BJ, genuine." He said, "That stopped us being immortal." He said, "Otherwise," he said, "we would have been immortal. Everybody else in New Zealand would have disappeared."
Brian Jones took out Nathan and Wineray, who peeled off from the lines out, and he didn't allow the All Blacks to leave their own half. You wanted to mention the only one part was the game to the victory. What was that?
There was so much in that game that you can isolate incidents, particularly when you recollect either over the years with your teammates or with the odd All Black that you contacted. I mean, we were fortunate here in 2013, the 50th anniversary of the year, and it was held here. And the president of the New Zealand Rugby was Ian McRae, who played in that game. In actual fact, he was one of the centres that Dick and I marked. And he said that everybody, he said, referred to in New Zealand not how well they played in beating the international sides and things like that. You know, what actually did go wrong at Rodney Parade? You know, why didn't Don save us? Well, Don couldn't save them because he didn't have a kick and goal. That's why Don couldn't save them. And he himself was the first to admit that. You know, he said that was, of all the rugby that Don Clark played, looking back on it from, as I say, a schoolboy, right the way through to his retirement, Rodney Parade is the only ground that he never had a kick and goal. And I think that in itself, at that time, spoke enormously for the team spirit of the Newport side on that afternoon. Another interesting factor, I mean, the general public wouldn't, but recently Ralph Colton, who played in that game, he passed away out in New Zealand. Now, 3 years ago, he came here, his son, who lives in London, he was over with his son, and his son arranged with the Dragons for him to come here to see the Dragons play and just to have a renewal with Rodney Parade. So the Dragons asked Dennis Bennett if he could get in touch with any of our 63 side to come here. Jacqueline and I came, and Stuart Watkins came. And we did interviews with the BBC Wales over near the dressing rooms, the new dressing rooms. And when we walked from here, from the Bisley Suite, through across the field, Ralph Colton said, "I can't believe it." He said to his son, he said, "I was walking across here," he said, "and the water was running down my boots." And he said, "And look at it now." And I said, "Wouldn't you like to play on this now?" Sure. He said, "Oh." He said, "This would have been 20-point start to us," he said, if it had been like this, of the difference in the playing surface.
There were some other matches against the All Blacks. For example, David Waters played against them, I think, in 1978. But what do you think was different from the 63 game? Like, if you've seen it.
Oh, I was just saying that they themselves considered the 63 side, I mean, all right, you were going to say it. I mean, if you were Wilson Winneray, but on top of that, Wilson Winneray played in a lot of All Black sides. Brian Lahore played in a lot of All Black sides, etc. But they all said, particularly those sort of world status players, said that it's the best All Black side that they ever played against. I think on a personal note, I've enhanced and I've spoken great pride, joy in that victory against the 63 All Blacks. 1960, I captained Newport that season, and we played the Springboks. Everybody, again, we were here geared perfectly. It was before coaching came in. So Bryn Meredith actually was playing in the team. Brian Price was playing in the team. David Watkins hadn't arrived at the club. But the pack, Newport pack on that day was the finest pack display that I've ever witnessed. They were absolutely beyond belief. They were just unbelievably incredible. Danny Craven, who was here, turned around and we lost the game 3-0, 3-0. And you as truly missed 3 penalty goals. Right? And I suffered, and I still suffer from them, of missing them. Because the pack, Danny Craven said, having spoken at the dinner afterwards, said, today's performance restored my faith in Welsh rugby. And the people who restored his faith were the 8 Newport forwards that day. They were absolutely magnificent. No, it's been great. It's been great. Rodney Parade is a wonderful place. Wonderful place. And currently, as I say, the board of directors, the management, the coaches, and the players have all got the same aim, and that is to maintain Newport Rugby Football Club at the top. At the top.